Hello, everybody. Benga Olatunji here. We want to talk about corporate governance. And when we are talking about corporate strategic management, there is no how we are not going to talk about corporate governance. And also, when we are talking about corporate governance, we cannot but talk about the board of directors. And this is going to be in series. We had looked at the role of the board of directors. If you are not part of us, I'm going to link it, show the link below so that you can access it because that's the first in the series. Now we want to deal with the composition of the board of directors. The composition of the board of directors. So when we are talking about the composition of the board, we'll be looking at the size of the board and the membership of the board. What do we mean by membership and the like? We are going to get there honestly. We are talking about executive and non-executive directors, and equally we must talk about the independent director. We are going to talk about the role of the independent director and how they can bring balance and diversity into the board. Of course, we are going to talk of the board balance as a result of membership of independent directors and non-executives and how you can bring balance and diversity, especially with the coming in of women on the board too. Especially we'll be looking at the Davies report of 2011 in UK. And it's equally important that I stress this when we're talking about corporate governance or corporate strategic management. It's a universal topic because we are talking about business, and business, finance, money cut across all over the world. So when we are talking about the board of director or the composition specifically as we are going to be doing right away, when you hear me talking about the UK experience, the Singapore experience, US experience, the Nigerian experience, and so many other nations of the world, is because we just must travel along these zones in order to bring diversity into the discussion and to see and get the best of practices when it comes to the board of directors and corporate governance. So we are welcome as we are joining into the discourse and lecture. If you are just joining us for the first time, we had loved that you subscribe. And if you've been with us and you can testify to the depths of the knowledge we are dishing out, please, if you have not subscribed to, subscribe and help us to build this community together. You also will be notified. Don't forget to click that notification button because that will help you to receive notification when we release new videos, which we definitely do. Also, it will help people around you to have a glimpse of what is happening so that they too can be beneficiary of this good work. So let us go into the video right away and the lectures. So I cannot overemphasize that. Please click it now. Thank you. So after this lecture on the composition of the board, what we'll be looking at next will be the role of the chairman of the board, the executive officer on the board, and the next, that is non-executive directors. So composition of the board, we'll be looking at the non-executive, the executive directors, the independent directors, balancing the board, and DAVIES report. Okay, so now in the lectures for today, the composition of the board of directors. At the apex of the organogram or structure diagram of the organization, we are going to find a man or a woman called or titled the chairman of the board. Usually it should be non-executive, but it could be executive too, but it is best practices that the chairman should be non-executive director. Also, the board of directors could comprise of a deputy chairman. An organization could have and may not. Then we'll be talking of the executive officer, the CEO popularly called. Then we'll be talking about other executive directors. And when we are talking about the executive, it simply means they are there at work on daily basis. Executives are always on the ground and around. Then part of the composition of the board is non-executive directors. So a board comprises of the chairman, the deputy chairman, the executive officer or chief executive officer. Then we have executive directors, we have non-executive directors. And for balancing, it is good that these people have different backgrounds, exposure, experience, independence, knowledge of varieties when it comes to business management and the business world. The directors should be able to allocate also sufficient time to their duty, especially the non-executive directors. They must ensure that they will be able, out of their busy schedule, allot good amount of time to their role in any board of director in which they are members. The board of directors should not be too big. It is in best practices that the board of directors should not be too big. Reason being that so that they will be able to manage resources and as much as is good when so many people are together, but it can slow down decision making. So in order for this not to happen or too often in occurrence, it's good that we stay within the zone of best practices. Usually the board should start with like 5 people, then should not be more than 15 people. Minimum of 5 membership to the maximum of 15 persons. Best practices. The UK Corporate Governance Code states that the board should not be so large to be unwieldy. So, best practices, we should not be too large in the composition of the board. Let us go to Singapore. In Singapore, the board should examine its size. It's part of the code that the board should examine its size with a view of determining the impact of the number of people upon the effectiveness of their decision making. Decide on what it consider an appropriate size for the board. So we'll see that generally best practices is that the board should not be too large. Having said that, let us examine executive and non-executive directors, especially when it comes to the board types of the board membership. So we can have unitary board, and we can have the unitary board, or the bilateral or two-tier board. So when we have unitary board composition, it simply means we have the overall chairman, then we have the executive and the non-executive combined together in one. But when we have two tiers or bilateral form of composition of the board, we'll be talking about the management board being separated from the supervisory board. For the unitary, we will only have the management board, but for the bi or two tier, we will be talking about the supervisory board, then we'll be talking about the management board. All these are their advantages and disadvantages. A unitary board in large company consists of the directors, executive directors, and non-executive directors. The non-executive directors are found on the board of most of stock market companies, that is listed companies. But they are also appointed to the board of subsidiary companies within a group, and to the board of private companies. So private organization too could form a board, like I said when we were looking at the role of the board. Private organizations are allowed. It's just that because of the complexity and monetary aspect of it, the financing aspect of it, they may not have the muscle to have a board of director, but they could compose it in their own way. Okay, so it is not compulsory that they should form it, but they can do so voluntarily. So let us talk about the executives. When you hear executive, it simply means that person is always on ground, always on duty. Simply put, that's what it means. But when we say non-executive, it means when you get to that place of work or assignment, you might not meet that person because he or she doesn't run the activity on daily basis. So it's non-executive. But when we're talking of executive, it's on daily basis. So that is the difference between the two of them. Executive directors are directors who also have executive management responsibility in the company. They are normally full-time employee. So let us talk about the non-executive directors now. When we are talking about the non-executive directors, they do not have executive management responsibility. So therefore, or equally, they are not full employee. So they may not be on the payroll of the organization. Of course, they will have their own remuneration, but they are not an employee. NED or non-executive directors are not employee of the organization. Therefore, they are not full-time staff. They are not even staff in the first place. When they are appointed, there should be a clear understanding about how much time an organization will need from non-executive directors. And when we are evaluating their performance and the like, this is one of the KPI key performance indicator apart from the contribution. Because one thing to be somewhere is another thing to actually contribute productively and constructively. So apart from their time KPI, their contribution to is of excellence. Independent directors, just from that word independent, that means they they are a bit afar off. They are not encumbered with so many things, or they are not too direct in the affairs of the organization. So basically, when we are talking about independence of an auditor or independent auditor precisely, we are talking about a director that does not have any association whatsoever, especially close association with the organization. In this sense, independence means they can have their own worldview and opinion as it relates to a particular matter concerning the organization, because they do not have so much of relationship that they can be thinking about or be like a constraint in their decision making. So they are more objective, and the composition of the board must have independent director to balance things up. Non-executive too could be independent director, but they may not. But independent director, they are not representing any stakeholder. They are just there to assist in objective decision making, without biases, without any influence. In corporate governance, however, independent we can say means something much more than having a personal opinion or objective opinion. So it means they must be separated from the affairs of the organization. They do not have stakeholders group that they relate to, and they do not have any personal interest in contracts or any relationship, financial or otherwise, as it relates to the organization. So you will look at the independent director this way, then we can conclude that the non-executive could be independent and they may not, because non-executive can represent a particular stakeholder, but for independent director, they are not representing any stakeholder, whether shareholder, whether governmental, whether community, or in any form. Having said that, let us look at Nigeria Code of Corporate Governance, then we move on to UK. For independence of a director to be sure, according to the Code of Corporate Governance in Nigeria, he or she must not have any share capital ownership whatsoever, and if at all he or she does, must be or below 0.1%. Apart from that, such a director must not be representing any stakeholder or have any significant influence on the management or staff. Must not be employee of the company and must not have any of his or her immediate family member within the organization. Equally, he cannot serve as independent advisor in whatsoever capacity, maybe to other directors, executive director, or management staff. Must not have any major or significant customer relationship or supplier relationship. No significant contractual relationship. and must not be a partner or executive of a company or in a company that work or serve as advisory or advisor to the organization in which he or she is on its board. So we move on to how we can balance the board, the balancing of the board. The UK Corporate Governance Code specifically let us know that we must have the combination of the non-executive, of the executive, and the independent director. They must all be on the board, and they must have diversified background, skill, knowledge, exposure. They must come with variety in order to balance the composition of the board. It is critical because if everybody is speaking the same language, that is, come from the same background, and everybody is saying yes, nobody is saying no, that is not diversity. But coming from different background, they will be able to look at things and criticize and constructively come to a mutual agreement that will benefit the stakeholders of the organization. Because they are coming from different background, it's an advantage to objective and constructive decision making. But it is equally important that all of them must have good judgment. All directors must accept responsibility and they must all be accountable. Judgment is key, acceptability of responsibility is key, and accountability is paramount for the board. And when they come together in diversity, it increases the strength and constructiveness and productive decision making. So when we are talking about diversity of the board now, we are talking in form of the background, like I said, their age range must not all be in the same category of age. Diversify, put millennium, put old, seemingly old people, put people that are younger, put middle age. Let everybody be, let the board be mixed, even in qualification, in experience, in personal attitude, marital status, religion. Let everything be diversified so that the worldview can be robust and their contributions will be unique. Benefits of having the board diversity. So when we have the membership of the board so robust, so diverse, what will accrue to such an organization? Effective decision making is paramount and is inevitable. They will be able to make well-rounded, objective decision because the contribution will come from different experience, exposure, and the like. And talents and idea will be utilized, especially for the non-executive directors too. So diversity enhance the corporate reputation. Because when people hear, okay, we have a young man or a young lady at the board of a director, is a millennial. Say, oh wow. So diversity actually enhance and give reputation to an organization, boost the image of the organization, and investors are more ready when they hear and they could see that they have real diversified board. Well, everything that has advantage must have its disadvantages or drawback. So diversity comes with its complexity, just as we can imagine. When we diversify and we have people of different age, experience, exposure, and the like. It's possible that some people feel that our decisions or our contributions are not really what really matter. We are just to be part of the quota, form the quorum, and vote. Whatsoever we do may not really be what really matter, but at least they want us to sit down or not. But that is not. But it could be because people are diversified. Also, when different people come from different backgrounds, we must be ready for conflict. There will be conflict. It is human nature that there will be conflict. Of course, at the board level, it is expected that everybody that will find his way to that apex must be mature at heart. So they must be able to resolve their personal issues and the like in the best interest of moving forward the organization. Women on the board. Women on the board. Recently, the whole world is clamoring for change, and women felt neglected or not being absorbed into the corporate world as the counterparts, the male. And this actually led to an investigation in UK in 2011, and the result came out actually to be that the best of the corporate organization management and board composition that they currently have was 12.5%. 12.5% of all the big companies in UK, the composition of ladies. So that means gentlemen are actually more. And it was proposed that okay, they should try as much as possible to increase the composition and involvement of ladies and women to 25%, and they were actually able to achieve this by 2015. Year 2015, they were able to achieve this. So we could see when organization or a country actually mean business in achieving aim or objective is highly possible. And that result achieved in the UK actually is spiral down to the end of the world, and different countries have started to ensure that ladies and women are involved in the board composition. So as we are concluding, we should look forward to the role of the chairman. We will be discussing next the role of the chairman, the chief executive officer, and non-executive directors in the composition of the board. If you are yet to subscribe to us, kindly subscribe, click the notification button. G James Associates, we are value to your business, we are value to life.